Algier out to the 35. This time London. He held on. Bijan slipped through and scored. Bates talking. Jesse Bates interception. 15-10. Drive home safely.
Falcons fans, welcome to the Final Whistle. Unfortunately, we've got a 27-24 loss to the New York Jets to talk about today. I'm going to be joined by Tori McElhaney to do just that. The Falcons dropped to 4-8 on the season. Really tough day for the special teams unit, and that's going to be kind of the main thing we kick things off with in our first quarter. But for those of you who are new to the show, we've got 4 quarters. We're going to break down all of the action. We have a whistle to let us know when we got to keep it rolling, and we're going to move right along to the first quarter, talk a little bit about special teams. Here we get Tori McElhaney, who was at the stadium in Metlife today to watch all the action. Tori, the Falcons special teams have been an issue all season long. I would argue this was their worst game in that area, and I think it really cost them today in this loss.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you don't have to look very far to make that statement, because at the end of the day, there's probably about a 10-point swing that you're looking at that when this game came down to a field goal, like those 10 points matter. And it's, of course, the 10 points that I'm talking about is you give up 7 after the muffed punt by Jamal Agnew that put them on the 2-yard line. And then, of course, you have a missed field goal from 50 yards out from Zane Gonzalez, who just made 2 from over 54 last week and then went on to make a 52-yard later in the game. I mean, there are so many things that when you look at this special teams unit, none of this is new either. I think that's kind of the main point that I would want to get at is just looking at the data, looking at the stats. The Falcons have only made 74.2% of field goal attempts since the start of last season, second worst in the NFL, ahead of only Cleveland. And then entering today, they were averaging a league worst 22.3 yards per kickoff return this season. I mean, these are not stats that are in a vacuum. These are stats over the course of like 2 seasons and the start of this season.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think you mentioned their kickoff return average there. I think their coverage has been just as much of an issue and impact plays. I mean, maybe there was none bigger than the very start of the fourth quarter. Isaiah Williams, the Jets return man, goes for 83 yards. And that was coming right off of Zane Gonzalez actually making a 52-yard field goal. So you felt like, okay, maybe it's a little bit of a redemption moment. Atlanta takes a lead, finally feels like they've gotten over the hump. And then it was just an early, not like, it didn't feel in the moment like it was back-breaking, but kind of in hindsight, it definitely led the way to ultimately how this fourth quarter maintained the like back and forth nature when Atlanta felt maybe poised to kind of put it away.
Yeah, I think even when Raheem was talking after the game and he just finished up his press conferences, he made the comment, we've not had the consistency. You need to go out there and dominate field position. And I think that's been a common theme all season long, and not even just this 85-yard return, but over the course of especially what feels like the last month and a half, the Falcons special teams have put this defense in really tough positions in terms of field position and how they're having to defend these offenses. And I just think that ultimately there's not really one thing about these special teams blunders that sticks out outside of poor tackling, maybe poor kind of
it's like lane integrity. Some of that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like it's all of those things, and it's just causing these really major issues that are continuing to put your team in a really tough space, whether it's defense or offense too, because offensively right now, you know that you don't have Drake London, you don't have Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins is trying his best, but then you have 3 receivers that kind of drop passes when you need guys going out and making those catches. And so ultimately there's just a lot wrong right now.
Yeah, like it does feel like at times so much can go right for the Falcons, because we're seeing, especially on defense, some of these individual flashes of like, wow, no, this is real and legit. And yet you still don't feel confident about kind of even at times 2 of the phases coming together to work in tandem. And it's just felt disjointed in the worst possible moments for Atlanta. Like to give up that muffed punt early in the game and what felt like both teams were willing to say this is going to be an ugly field position type of game, to gift them those points was just huge and indicative ultimately of how this season has gone and where the Falcons have gone. And it stinks especially because, and let's move to our second quarter here, Jared. We'll kind of run up the clock a little bit because they wasted a great performance by Bijan Robinson. I mean, Tori, do you have the numbers in front of you? Are you able to access them? If not, I can read them out here. But
yeah, I have a few. He recorded his 30th career scrimmage touchdown, becoming the fastest Falcons by game to reach 30 scrimmage touchdowns all time. This was Bijan's third game with 175 plus scrimmage yards this season. He's one of 5 Falcons to record 3 or more such games in a single season all time. And then the big one is he now surpassed 1,500 receiving yards for his career. I mean, he's the fastest Falcons running back by games to do that all time. He has the most scrimmage yards through the first 12 games of the season in franchise history. I mean, it really, I could keep going and going about all of these accolades that Bijan continues to rack up. But again, it goes back to a conversation that we had even last year, maybe even a little bit the year before, where you're having these individual players and playmakers that are getting overshadowed by the team ultimately not being able to win games.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to just how great Bijan is, and he finished with 193 scrimmage yards, second most of his career, just shy or just behind the 232 yards he had earlier this year. But like, he's moving, I think he's on already the Mount Rushmore of just like most electric Falcons athletes of all time. I think that's Julio Jones, Deion Sanders, Michael Vick, and now Bijan Robinson. Like, that's kind of my 4 of just like, they're in a different tier of player. And he was just doing kind of a little bit of everything, whether it was a screen pass and taking that the distance, or maybe my favorite play was when he kind of like sidestepped the defender who penetrated on that trap play. And then it was only like a 12-yard gain, like not compared to his 50-yard gains that he broke at times. It was kind of a minimum gain for him, but it was so good. It was so indicative of just what he does.
Yeah, no, he goes out there and he does things that it sometimes feels like only he can do. And this was evident throughout the entire game. When nothing was really working offensively, Bijan ended up finding a way to make something happen. I thought that early in the game, they were able to run the ball pretty well for the most part. I mean, he was averaging, I think, 6.9 yards per carry in the first half. Like, this was something that, like, you want to be able to talk about Bijan Robinson in the context of being one of the best in the league. And while you still can do that, you're having to compete with other backs who are winning 8, 9, 10 games and are going to be in playoff contention. And right now, that's not the Falcons. And it's unfortunate because, like, someone like Bijan deserves that. Like, you talk about even like Pro Bowl voting, like stuff like that. Yeah. You know, how many people are not going to vote for Bijan because the Falcons don't really have a lot of name recognition right now? Like, right? Like, no one's talking about the Falcons in a good way, regardless of how Bijan individually is doing. And that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate because my favorite, like my personal kind of comp for him has actually always been Steph Curry, with just how much fun he can be to watch at times. Like, he just does things that frankly nobody else in the NFL is doing. And you do feel like he would be a red zone favorite. He kind of still is. But yeah, if the Falcons had flipped their record and they're 8-4 right now, he is selling jerseys across the league at like one of the highest rates in the league.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even, gosh, I think it was even in like week 4, week 5, week 6. I think it was after that Bills game when he absolutely went off and people were, you know, having conversations about like, is it too early to talk about MVP, offensive MVP status? And it's like, he should be on that level of
that was a fun time.
Right. Yeah. A short-lived time. But like that was a part of the zeitgeist of conversations and happening at that time. And it's because the Falcons were playing on the biggest stage and they were winning. Like, that's when you talk about those things. That's when you get that momentum going in that direction, not when you're coming off of a 3-point loss to the Jets at MetLife. Yeah. And now you're a 4-win team.
Absolutely. I do want to give a quick shout out too to like Kyle Pitts. I thought actually played one of his best games, 7 catches, 82 yards. Tyler Algier looked effective in the red zone. So I want to kind of put a pin in those guys and kind of the rest of the offense. We'll get to Kirk Cousins in 1 second. But first, let's take a quick halftime break to tell you about this really awesome stat from Microsoft Copilot. Well, we just spent all this time talking about Bijan Robinson, so why not just keep it going? Bijan Robinson has been running the ball outside of the tackles the most of any running back in the league, and he did it at the highest rate of any player in a game this season on Sunday. He ran outside the tackles on 21 of his 23 carries against the Jets. That's crazy. It kind of makes me think Bijan would be the greatest punt returner or kick returner in the NFL if he wasn't one of the most valuable offensive players in the NFL, just with the way that dude eats up space. I feel like if I was an NFL defender, the way quarterbacks sometimes have nightmares against or about excellent pass rushers, I would be having nightmares about having to tackle number 7 in the open field. He is so elusive. And the Falcons now lead the NFL with a 74.2% outside run rate, the highest of any team in the last decade. That's crazy. But hey, Bijan Robinson makes it look easy. So that is your halftime stat presented by Microsoft Copilot. Let's keep it rolling into the third quarter. Yeah, so the offense kind of as a whole, I thought Kirk Cousins, you look at his numbers, 21 of 33, 234 yards, 1 touchdown, a 94.8 passer rating. It really, I don't think was that bad given kind of how gross the weather was at times. Mentioned Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, we're still waiting to see from. Some practice squad guys got going. But Tori, my question for you is that at times, especially in the third quarter there, it seemed like everything was rolling. You know, they were getting some plays to Kyle Pitts. Bijan was breaking off some chunk plays. Where does that go in the fourth quarter? Like when they kind of needed it most, they were throwing to David Sills and Darnell Mooney, who again I trust. Like I trust Darnell Mooney, but you just kind of felt like they got away from their best guys right there.
Yeah, I mean, like what we said in the last quarter, like what was working was Bijan. You obviously like are up against the clock. You don't have timeout, so you can't like run the ball. But Bijan in the pass game is still viable. Like especially some of those like check downs that he has where he can just kind of like go make somebody miss and get out of bounds. Like it's unfortunate because when you look at the scope of what it could have been, especially I go back to that like 3 passes, 3 incompletions. I think it was the second to last 3 and out that the Falcons had. Those are good balls by Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Those are catchable balls. I think the one to Kyle Pitts, like whoever the DB in coverage was, I think he just made a really, really good play. So you give that to, but Darnell Mooney got to catch the ball. David Sills got to catch the ball. Like these are things that at this level, like you got to help your guy out a little bit. Cause like you said, the margin for error is so small when the weather is the way it is. That's why special teams is such an important piece of the conversation. But if you convert, you at least give yourself the opportunity to go and kick a game winner. And they didn't even give themselves an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, like after Kirk Cousins throws that 9-yard touchdown pass to David Sills, he's incomplete on his 2nd and 9, he's incomplete on 3rd and 9, then he's incomplete on those 3 passes, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down, kind of on their final drive. It's just... And
those weren't bad balls. Again,
no, they weren't.
Right? Like that's my biggest thing that I want people to take away is like, they were the right, he made the right decision. They were the right looks. They were the right throws. And it's not on him that they were not catchable, like that they were.
Yeah, I'm saying his name, right? So that's a great call out because I'm saying like Kirk is incomplete. No, when Raheem Morris says we got to find a way to make these plays, the way I hear that is kind of like we need somebody to step up and make the game winning play. And again, like the weather is what it is, but some of those balls you got to find a way to come up with. And that's where you look at ultimately some of the decisions. Like there was one decision, I think the Falcons were 0 for 4 on 3rd down at the time, and Kirk kind of throws it deep to Dylan Drummond. And in a game like this where the weather is gross and it's kind of like the ultimate equalizer between one team that, again, at times like looked like the better team, but you kind of level the playing field a little bit. It's those decisions that you feel like almost kind of come back to cost you late where, hey, could you have just scrambled on a 3rd and 3 and maybe picked up the first down or looked short to Charlie Warner quick. What'd you make of just kind of the feel of the game at times? And did Atlanta do enough offensively, even as great as they were, to put this game away early?
Yeah, I think that offensively, they were always searching for like stringing plays together. There were so many times that Bijan Robinson had an explosive, or Kyle Pitts had he had a couple good 3rd down catches that ended up going for, over 10 yards a pop. And but it never felt like there was anything beyond those moments. It was like those moments happened in a vacuum within their drives. And then, I mean, I don't know how many times the Bradley Pinion punted the ball today or how many punts there were. Felt like a lot. But that was kind of the nature of this game. And when you aren't, it goes back even to something that they were saying, I want to say a couple weeks ago when we were talking about 3rd down issues and not being able to convert 3rd downs and not stringing drives together. That came up again today, especially in that first half. I think they were 4 of 12, 33% today. Yep. And the first 3rd down that they converted was like with 2 minutes left to go in the first half. That's just not going to sustain anything. That's not sustainable.
No, it's not. And again, on a day like this where you are the team that's kind of making these really costly impact plays, that like they made some really good impact plays too, but I would argue the biggest swing plays in this game were the negative ones by the Falcons. And on a gross day where it's going to be a tight game, that's what ultimately comes up to cost you. Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny too, because a weird stat is like if Kyle Pitts has over, 72 yards receiving, the Falcons are like going into today, we're like 10-2 and now they're 10-3. Like you, again, it goes back to what we were saying about like playmakers were having good moments, but nothing's like building on top of that. Like that's like the foundational stuff. Even James Pierce, a sack, another sack, who should have had 2. Like things were going really well and they lost. So Tori, that's kind of why it feels like the Falcons are the weirdest team in the NFL this season, and not in a good way. It seemed like maybe it was going to be a kind of fun, oh man, here's another memorable Falcons roller coaster season, when they had beaten the Bills. And it was like, all right, you do that Panthers game, but this team can also hang with the best of them. And not just that, look like the best team in a game with a Super Bowl favorite. Like, and then to kind of go where we've gone. And at moments still very much look like that. Like I think I said this to you before, right? The Falcons looked like probably for 75% of this game, the better team out there. It's just that the 25% in which they didn't was so costly that it ultimately cost them the game. Yeah. And how many times have we had this conversation? I think this is the first time that we're having this conversation with mics in front of us. But like, this is right. But this is not the first time that we have said this. And I think that when I look at where this team goes from here, I think the fact that the Panthers were simultaneously doing what they did to the Rams as the Falcons messed up time and time and again in New Jersey, like that makes this loss hurt worse. It should make you feel worse, because you talk about the Falcons being the weirdest team in the NFL. I'd say that it's the Panthers right now. It's a great counter. And I think that the fact that this team that you were supposed to be better than on paper, you had been better than on paper, goes and blows you out in week 3. They beat you again 2 weeks ago, and now they're like unseating the leader in the NFC. Yeah, the team everybody feels is a buzzsaw right now. Yeah, like they're going and beating them. I mean, it's just kind of this strange place to be for the Falcons when when you felt like going into this season that it wasn't supposed to be like this. Yeah. No, absolutely. This was kind of, it was the Falcons' turn. It's kind of like the Panthers cut Atlanta in line for what was supposed to be theirs. And Tampa Bay also beat the Cardinals. So now you've got Tampa and Carolina at 7 wins. I mean, again, nobody was coming away from this game and going to be talking about playoffs or anything like that. No. But now it's a much, much, much longer shot. I mean, we're essentially kind of, I think, done with those conversations unless anything crazy happens. But I wouldn't bet on it at this point. So Tori, what was kind of Raheem's overall message today after this one? What was the topic of discussion?
I think a lot of it was about special teams and how inconsistent it's been, how much that has been a dagger to any type of progress that they have. He said that he felt like the defense and the offense did enough to win the game. I think that can maybe be debated.
I think there's something to maybe look into, and maybe we kind of talk about this more this week, but like the first half defense versus the second half defense. And I think time of possession plays into that, but this has become a little bit of a trend where the defense you've counted on when you need them most, they used to make those plays. They're kind of not right now.
Yeah, no, it's a good point because, I mean, and of course there's some luck in it, like a 56-yard field goal that I don't think gets above like 7 feet off the ground like, to win the game. I mean,
Taryn was slacking me in real because you guys were ahead on the broadcast, and she was like, "That was the craziest kick that I've like ever seen." I
couldn't agree more. I don't think I've ever seen one quite like that, and I've seen a lot of kicks. But to the point,
Weird brag.
Very weird. But to your point about like, I mean, what Raheem was talking about, he seemed pretty angry. And I think he should be. Like, he should be angry because this team is not anywhere close to reaching the expectations of what they set out for themselves. And I also think what the outside and the fan base was wanting and needing them to be. They're not anywhere close to that. They're not winning games. And so that's why you have kind of these feelings. And it's frustrating too, because you would want, again, to go back to what we were talking about before, you want someone like Bijan Robinson to be in the locker room right now and be super excited and super happy about his performance and how it's, a franchise record in some ways. And that's not what's happening. And
I know there's been, a lot of talk amongst the fan base about, all right, coaching, execution, what have you. Today was a day where if I am a coach, like I am frustrated because I feel like they came in with excellent game plans on both sides of the ball. Offensively, they were really kind of getting a lot of yardage with their plays. And I know third down, it was not working for them today, but I thought a lot of the designs were interesting, the personnel, the formations. Like I liked what I saw from Zach Robinson. And then defensively, I mean, Jeff Holbrook's group has been nails all season long, but I thought they came up with a really good kind of challenging man defense, and they started switching things up once Tyrod Taylor was scrambling early on. Like, did you feel like this was a game, even when they were trailing early, that the Falcons were in control of, Tori, really quickly before we wrap up?
Maybe, but I don't.
I know that's hard to say right now.
I know.
Right?
I don't think I felt that way until the third quarter, because the first half to me was a dud. So I didn't necessarily feel that anybody had it at that point. Like going into halftime, I was just kind of like, yeah, Bijan Robinson is railing off like 6.9 yards per carry right now.
Keep giving him the ball.
Right, but that was kind of it. So I didn't necessarily, until the Falcons kind of started getting things together after that first touchdown run of the second half, that was when I kind of felt that way.
Yeah, the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half too was nice to see, probably build some momentum, but that's our final whistle. Thank you guys so much for listening as always. Definitely not the result anybody wanted, dropping 27-24 to the 3-9 New York Jets. But for Tori McElhaney, I'm Will McFadden. Thank you all so much. Check out Falcons Audible midweek, Friday 5 coming on Friday, and we will see you next time.